Okay, today we're going to do something wonderful. We're going to make a new journal that's like a really pretty shabby chic kind of pink journal. And then we're going to learn about succession of blooms and succession planting, which makes a huge difference in gardening. And this is something I learned about at Winter Tour, an estate that's near Longwood Gardens. They're both DuPont estates. But Winter Tour, they do a succession of blooms where it goes like in waves of colors. So like the overall garden is like, let's say, all blues or all pinks. And they do that like all along the year. So when I saw that, I decided I'm going to do that for myself. So I've been doing that like for years. And I just want to walk you through like how you do that and maybe the easiest way you can do it. So we're going to make this little journal, and this will help us plan that all out. So I've just taken 5 pages of like pink copy paper, and then I sprayed them with all different pinks, and then some Tattered Angel spray, which is just like mica sprays. I used some Distress Spritz sprays from Ranger, and just all different things. So I have all different layers of pink, a little bit of white, and then some coffee colors and gold colors. And then I edge punched those big pages with the Martha Stewart punch, and then these little tracing paper pages I did with another like smaller Martha Stewart punch. So I just ripped these in half. And these just came from a pad of tracing paper, which either came from a grocery store or like the dollar store. But I feel like these will make a nice contrast to all our nice pink pages. So we're just going to intersperse these white pages in with our pink ones. And that way it gives a little bit of extra room for like documenting things or, adding notes, whatever. So I think I have 6 of these white pages. So since we have 12 months of the year and then we only have 5 pages, then we're going to have to like double up on certain months. So we're going to start with the month of March, and then we're going to go to the month of February. So you can imagine the winter months, we don't have as much to document. So those we can double up. So here I'm taking some seam binding that is a beautiful pink. And I buy these assortments on Amazon. And they'll have like all different colors. So I'm just going to take that length and then just cut that in half. And we're going to use this for a closure. So for the cover, I just took the same pink paper, but I did not edge punch it. And then again, I just sprayed it with all different things. And I kind of had everything spread out on my den floor on plastic, but it's a tile floor, so if something gets on it, I can just wipe it up. So that was pretty fun, actually, to just sit down and spray all those different things and let them dry. So this is a digital from Birdie Bloom's Prints on Etsy, and she has like one set that's like a songbird collection. So I think this is so pretty. It's like birds and music paper and flowers like roses. I just think this is so beautiful. So I'm adding some like archival like brown ink from Ranger, and that way it kind of matches the other 3 sides here. So I'm going to give it like a lot of like a nice thick line and like a lot of distressing here. So I did use the Ranger, like the new Spritz sprays, like Tim Holtz sprays, and I think I used like there's a pink set, and I think I used all 3. So I just did a lot of different spraying things, and then just turned it over and made sure the other side looked good, and then just let it all dry for a day. So now I'm just going to add this digital on top, but first we want to make sure that we add that like seam binding for a closure. So if I add it now, like between these 2 layers, it's much sturdier. So I'm just going to kind of heavily glue this, and then I'm just going to put a little, like an inch worth of that seam binding on there. But it really helps like when I kind of douse this with glue, then I can unwrinkle that binding a little bit. And now I'm just going to add that top page. So I'm trying to get glue as close to the edge as I can. But I still want to, show some of those pink edges. So that's why I did trim this down. But since this is a nice, like, shabby chic kind of journal, this doesn't have to be perfect. So now we have the front cover glued on with that seam binding. And then we're just going to do the same thing on the back. So I'm just going to bring that seam binding back to know exactly where it should fall. And then I'll add the back piece. Because we're going to tie this in a bow, like when we're not using our journal. So I do think this is the kind of journal, like for me personally, where I'll be adding a lot of notes and things. So it's kind of a nice one where I can tie this up tight and then hopefully my notes won't be like falling out of it. So I'm just trying to smooth out all those wrinkles so that this back cover looks nice and, as flat as we can get it. So these daffodils are my first cut flowers of this year, and I also cut some of that greenery, but then those purple, those flowers are just like silk blooms from the Dollar Tree. But that's what my yard looks like right now. It's like, I should say a few days ago, it was like a dominant like yellow. So I had daffodils and the forsythia was blooming, and that's still blooming. We had some bad weather, so the daffodils kind of came and went pretty quickly. But so in my front yard, I have dominant like yellow everywhere. So I have daffodils, I have forsythia like spread out all over my front yard, like in bunches, I would say. And then I do have accents of purple, which is like purple crocuses. And then I also have some white, like I have bloodroot, which is white. So that's what this whole process is about, is like documenting like what is happening with each week of the year. And it's really helpful for planning out like what you do in your garden, the plants that you choose that bloom in different periods of time. So what we're trying to do is just really maximize like the flowers and the beauty in your yard. But the more that we plan, the easier it is. And then also like the less plants you need to do that. So I'm just taking these pages and they look pretty thick and fluffy, I would say. So that's kind of the fun of edge punching these. With that big design, they like really take on a life of their own. And then I'm just going to intersperse some tracing paper here. And if this is too like stark of a difference and you'd rather do like more pages that fit in better, you can definitely do that. I just personally just like tore them in half, and that way they were like, half height. And then I'm just putting these pages in here like haphazardly, so I'm not trying to center all of them or anything like that. And I'm talking about the white pages. So as far as like they're sliding up and down against these pink pages, and that's totally fine with me. I'm trying to do them a little bit more random. But I like doing these edge punches so that things just look really varied. I really like that in the pages in my journals. So we're going to get all these pages in here, and then what we're going to do is I have these labels, and they're from like the month labels are from a shop on Etsy called Citrus Journal Subby, SUBI. And then I think she might have changed the name of her shop to Citrus Journal Studio. So both of those I think will get you to her shop. And she has a lot of great kits, or sets of things. But one of them is she has these really cool labels of all the different months. So I'm just going to go like one page in to start like putting these months in. But first what we're going to do is bind this journal. So since we have like these kind of thick pages, I'm going to clip this. And then I just poked a hole in the center of this. And I do something that, I call like thread staples. So I'm just trying to sew something that's about the size of a staple. And since I want the embroidery floss to end up on the outside, then I start on the outside, and then I'm using a darning needle, those are easy to thread. I love using these big darning needles, but it works with this embroidery floss to thread them. So I'm just gonna, I started from the outside, I came around into the inside and back outside again, and now I'm just gonna tie this in a knot. And so I'm doing 3 of these. I'm gonna do these are all 3 towards the center, so I can hit all those white pages, but I'm just going to take 3 of these. So typically I would do 2, but on this journal, since it's kind of like fluffing out quite a bit, I just wanted to do 3. But I feel like this is really pretty, and our normal way of binding things, I think this is actually a little bit more secure, doing it like as a like a faux staple or whatever. But you just want to have them not tight, I would say, but just tie them enough that they're holding, they're not loose, but you don't want to have them so tight that it's pulling at that hole. So I just use an awl to poke my little holes here, and this one I'm just eyeballing. Other things I might measure, but this one I'm just eyeballing it. So I'm just poking 2 holes about a 1/2 inch apart, I would say. And then you could also, if you want like your threads dangling on the inside, you would just start from the inside. So wherever you want your threads to tie, that's where you start. And if you have a lot of embroidery floss, that's all this is embroidery floss. You can leave really long tails and like tie these in bows. You could also add like beads or jewels or dangles or whatever you want. I actually found I have like little metal bird beads, so I might end up adding those on the outside. But this is something you can add to over time. So this is almost just like our base as we move forward here. So I have these little headings. Those are the ones I was telling you about from Citrus Journal Studio. And I love these for the different months. And then she also has ones with numbers and things that say like notebook, or they might even say field notes. I kind of forget, but really, really cute. And then I just printed out labels in like a dusty pink that say week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. And that's how I track all of this. I'm not sure if other people track it differently, but that's just the way that I track it. I suppose you could do like, the numbers like March 1st, 2nd, whatever. But I just find like this is the simplest, and year to year, it makes the most sense to me. So I've got week 1, week 2. And then for March, since a lot is going to be coming out in like these summer months, spring and summer, then I'm going to do a whole 2-page spread for that month. And then I have the inside piece, which if I need to add more somewhere, I can do that. So what I'm doing here is just putting the weeks, and then that week I will just take note of what is blooming, and especially what new is blooming. But then the kind of wrinkle for, I'm going to call it the winter tour succession of blooms, where we go by color. Not just that we're having blooms, but that we have blooms and we're trying to coordinate the colors. Then that you want to make sure that you put what is blooming and then its color. So here I've added, all the different things that are blooming in my yard right now. And you can see I've got yellow, purple, white, and then my hyacinths are blooming pink. So I bought a like an assortment of hyacinth bulbs, and they were supposed to be like, let's say, pinks and purples. So I was hoping they would be leaning more towards the purples, but they're pretty pink. So in my garden, I have all yellows with like an accent of purples and some whites, and then these pinks are kind of like standing out. So I'm probably going to move those to a different spot. So this is the whole point of this, is not just having the blooms, but then also planning out the colors of the blooms. So in my front yard, everything right now reads like evergreen and yellow and purple. And things that are pink, I'm going to put them in like one little garden in my front yard, or more than likely I'll move them to my backyard. So this is very helpful because like I like to plant tulips. I'm Dutch, so tulips bloom all different weeks in the spring and early summer, I guess. I would call it still the spring. But you can buy, different colors of tulips, obviously, but what actually comes up is sometimes not exactly what you thought it was going to be. So I tend to buy a lot of purples, and they will tend to come up pinks. So this is just a way for me to see like what bulbs are blooming at what point, and then if I'm trying to coordinate colors, that way I can move them to spots where, maybe I have a patch of like pink flowers in the spring, but it's not like, almost like sticking out like a sore thumb in my other gardens where there's a color scheme happening. So this is just a way of figuring all of that out. Because when they sell tulips, a lot of times it will say like early, mid, and then late. But it is helpful to know week by week when they actually bloom and what their actual colors are. So that's why we're documenting all of this. So as you go along, you can be moving things, or, the truth is I buy things, I plant them, and then I have to wait to see what I get when they come up. So that's part of this process. But obviously spring blooms are many times bulbs, and those are easy to move. So that's not a big deal. And in my yard, it's so funny because I can plant as much as I want, but the squirrels are moving everything around. So I, from year to year, I have to figure out what is blooming. Like this year I have bulbs blooming in, I have like a little, I would say like a bird sanctuary kind of spot, and I have these beautiful white star flowers blooming, and I'm pretty sure I did not plant those, and I did not plant them there. So sometimes the squirrels actually, I'm guessing it's the squirrels, they're bringing in bulbs from like other people's yards, I think. So you just kind of have to wait to see what's happening and what you're getting. But it is kind of fun to document all of that. But like these, since they're white, it's like a nice accent color. So I'm just going to let them go. But I don't know if you have this, but in the spring, I will find a lot of bulbs just like out on my sidewalk because something has dug them out, and I'm not totally sure what they're doing with them, but so then I have to replant them or whatever. But when you like, when I moved into my house, I had like it's kind of interesting, a line of daffodils that were in the shade. So they never bloomed. So I took that line of daffodils and I was replanting them. And like, this is the same set of bulbs. I've just planted them all over my yard. And then every year I like divide them more. So at this point, there's like bunches of daffodils all over my yard. But every single year, including this year, they come up in this same shady spot. So whoever originally planted these bulbs, even though I keep trying to dig out like every last bulb and put it in a sunny spot so it will actually bloom, the more keep coming up like every single year. So I do have a bunch of these I can divide and put in more places. Like last year we redid in my yard like the front garden, like a before and after, and I had added some daffodils and those bloomed so beautifully. But I do have more, so I think I can add a couple more bunches to the front. But it's kind of nice to have mass plantings, especially when they come from like one plant, so you don't have to keep repurchasing. You can just keep dividing it. But in my yard, I used to have a lot of forsythia, which blooms yellow, and then I put little plantings of that, divided all over my yard. Now, forsythias can grow out of control, so you do want to be careful about that. But it's beautiful when they bloom. It's just a mass of yellow in my front yard. So it's really pretty. So I'm still adding the months and then each one of these labels. So we always have like the week 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then throughout the year, you would just notice like what new is blooming or what you can see. So in these fall months, we're going to have, trees turning colors. So you can document, I have yellow trees. I have trees turning, dark burgundy. But just document like what colors you're seeing. And then that will help to plant plants that, like I have sedum autumn joy, which is almost like a dusty burgundy, I would say. And so if you have a burgundy tree, then you might be able to plant that near that, and it just kind of accents it or more like adds to it. So it's good to just observe like what's coming out, what colors you have. Even the evergreens, like as we come into the like the more winter months, like in midwinter, what do you see? Do you have blue spruces? Do you have like yellow green, like arborvitaes? Like what colors are you seeing, and what things are dominant in your landscape? What things are standing out? Even it can be forms of things. Like I have hydrangeas, and in the winter, those still stand out. Like, we get snow that fall on them, and they really stand out. But for winter, for me, it's, blue spruces, Leland cypresses. My arborvitaes are more like on the yellow side. So, it's just like documenting those different colors of evergreens during the winter. But that can also really help you plan out. Like for me, I try to figure out like what do I need to cut as far as foliage for like, arrangements for holidays and things. And it can really help you know what you want to plant more of in your yard. So here we are in February, and you can see I don't have much room between like the different weeks because we really don't need it. There's not much going on. But if you can document like what's in your landscape in February, it will really help you figure out what to plant in the summer. And then if like me, if you have like snowfall, you might think about like the form of an evergreen. Does it look nice when the snow falls on it? So now I'm just going to put pockets in the front and the back. And this is Anna Griffin paper. But this way, I'm never like perfect or even remotely perfect about, well, I'm documenting every single week and things like that. I might write it on notes and just, put it in this notebook. Or like in my case, I have my older gardening journal that has these notes in it, and I might just rip out all those pages and put it in the front here. And that way I can start integrating like what things I've documented over the years and like what still applies now. But that way everything's kind of contained into one place. But this is such a worthwhile thing to do, because for me, the goal of like gardening in my yard is to have like when I look out the window to, be encouraged and just to have it be a beautiful, like you were in the middle of a forest, or, I was at Winter Tour or Longwood Gardens. Like as much as I can do that in my own yard, I want to do that. So all these different ways that we can do that as home gardeners, I think it is really, really helpful. And I mean, honestly, these people, like the DuPonts, I guess they're home gardeners too, just on an industrial scale, right? So we can do the same things that they do, maybe on a more reasonable scale. But I think if you have a journal where you want to pick it up and document stuff, it will go a lot better, and it will be something that inspires you and not a homework assignment. That's not what this is meant to be. It's something that hopefully inspires you. So I hope you like this concept, and I hope it's something that sparks your interest, and that you do a journal like this and we can document these things right alongside each other. I would really love that. Love to have you subscribe and watch these videos, and I will show you in my yard like how this plays out and what it looks like. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having a wonderful day. And thank you so much for subscribing and for liking and commenting. I really appreciate that.